Hi guys, it's Ella Harp. My birthday's coming up in a few days, which means it must be time to make a new dress. So I'm going to be making a slightly modified version of my basic work dress pattern, which I have on here. You can get it as a free download on my website. And as you can see, it's a scoop neck with a single panel front. But this time around, I'm going to be doing a dual panel front and putting faux buttons and a V-neck and a few other things that I'm cooking up. It'll be in this beautiful orange linen fabric, and I wanted to show you guys the process. So let's get started. So starting with the essentials, I have my basic top cutout, which is a little bit bigger than it needs to be in the ends, but that's to factor in the shrinkage. I don't wash my fabric first. I wash it after the dress is completed because I like it to be nice and crispy. I've got my good scissors and, of course, a cup of tea. On the back of this dress, I do it with a seam up the back, so I have two separate pieces. But for this one, I'm going to do the same in the front, and I'm going to put little buttons on there. So I'm going to do both front and back panels, two pieces. For the skirt panel, I just use the fabric that I have left. That'll be for the back panel. This will be for the front. And I just cut it at a taper so that it's narrower at the top than the bottom, which I find makes it easier for the gathers. For the back skirt piece, I am making it a little bit longer at the bottom because I like it to be offset. For the sleeves, I just use whatever fabric I have left. So there's pretty much this strip down here. I'm just folding this over, making a general sleeve taper, and then cutting it. This one's going to be a little bit longer than the other one, as you can see, but that kind of stuff doesn't really bother me because I just take an extra strip, sew it onto the bottom of the shorter one, and then I have something that makes it a little bit more unique. And these are the shapes of the sleeves. So I don't do a bell or anything for these strap sleeves, I just cut them straight. And then as you can see, this is going to be the extra piece that'll be sewn onto the bottom of this side. So here are all the pattern pieces. I like to start with the back panel and sew those together. Then I will sew the shoulders of the back panel to the front panel. Then I will gather both of the skirts, and then I will sew both of those onto the front and back panels. Then I will add the sleeves onto each one of the shoulders, and then I take a French seam and sew from the end of the sleeve all the way down to the bottom of the hem. Time, it's the enemy, it's the only thing we own. The waiting game is never shown to you. Wait longer, as more, as less. Be better, just do your best. And scream. Front and back pieces are sewn together at the shoulders using flat felled seams. And I took a minute just to pin down the front pieces and put them together to make sure that it lays all flat, which it does. So now I'm going to sew those down, and that's where the buttons will go. Now that the top is ready and all pinned in place, I'm going to start by taking these and getting these all gathered up. To make the gathers for my skirt, I have my machine on its widest zigzag, and then I'm going to pull this thread out long enough so that I can tighten it once it's done. And then I'm going to start sewing and try and hold this centered so that it stays right between. And then as you're sewing, this will continue to gather as I go. For sewing the gathered skirt panel onto the body pieces, I'm going to take this gather and put it on top of this body panel, which is underneath, as you can see. That's the right side of the front panel. And I'm going to sew this gather down with about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch on the body panel side, which will then be folded over on the inside of the dress later to make sure you don't have any open seams. So on the inside, to finish off this raw edge, that excess fabric that we left is going to be folded over once and then again and sealed over that raw edge right there. This is pretty narrow. This was just over 1/2 inch. So if you want this to be larger, you can have left a 3/4 or up to 1 inch to make it easier to fold over and sew down. Now that you're left with this edge being sealed, we're going to sew it down flat to the upper part, to the body panel of the inside. So that's going to make it so that on the outside, you'll have one more seam right at the top there, but on the inside, it's not gonna have any raw edges. So here's what I've got right now. Those skirts have been sewn down and finished on the inside and the outside. And I'm now going to put the sleeves on. So I'm going to start by sewing that bit onto the end of one of my sleeves and then start attaching them to the shoulders. The sleeve with the extra piece to make it longer is all ready to go. So I'm going to sew it now onto the shoulder, once again using flat felled seams. When I do flat felled seams, instead of sewing everything together and then cutting one side down, I just inset it about 1/4 of an inch or so to 1/2 of an inch, depending on how much I want to have extra. And then I just sew it down and then fold it over afterwards. Saves me a step. Everything is pretty much sewn together. Sleeves are on. The bottom has been hemmed on both sides because I want it to be a little bit heavier down at the bottom and a little bit shorter in length. I'm still going to need to deal with the neckline. I'm going to cut off that extra fabric because I want it to be sort of like a V-neck, but I will do that afterwards. So now I'm going to do a French seam starting from the sleeve. With the uneven hem that I've gone for here before the final seam of the French seam, I've just gone in and folded this over so that there's a nice clean finish. Done the French seams and now I'm working on the neckline. So this is how it started out, kind of up and everything, and I've just folded this down and over to where I want it to be. So at this point I'm going to cut this as it is, and then I'm going to fold this over. I like to do outside hems. I don't know why, but they always seem to go flatter for me for some reason, and I like seeing the little edge personally, so I'll be doing that here on the neckline. So I've pinned the neckline on this side roughly where I want it to be. So now I'm going to cut off the excess so that I can do my hem here. So I want to give it a little bit of extra space. I'm going to go right along that line right there. Sometimes my hemlines look really nice when they are folded over, but not so nice when they're sewn. So that side's just been folded over once, but this side has been folded over twice. And if something's not laying flat, I will just sew it down on itself again, and the extra layers of fabric seems to smooth things out pretty well. So for the back neckline, I'm going to do the same folding over and fold over again, and then sewing that down. And I'm going to be careful around here at the edges because we have the seams from our front neckline to fold this over in such a way that it actually covers that up. It's hard to do with one hand, but cover up all those little bits there. Leftover fabric scraps, this is going to make the pockets like that. And then there's also this long skinny one. So I've decided to make some ties for the back. So now we have 2 pockets and 2 tie straps. So the straps are sewn on just to the side seams here, and the pockets are pinned. I like to put them at a bit of an angle with the inside seam a little higher so that my hands can go in like that. I find it's a bit more comfortable. When I'm sewing the pockets on, one thing that I like to do is at the edges, and the tops. If this little flap is open, sometimes it sticks out of the top of the pocket over time, which bothers me. So I just fold it in and then sew down over it. So I'm now over at my friend's workshop. On the back seam, I sewed this little leather patch, and I'm going to burn a ginkgo leaf onto it just by drawing it on with a little soldering iron, because that's my little flair that I like to put on things. The silence is louder than noise. Loud, 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 loud. And that's it. Buttons have been sewn on, the pockets are in place, and it's ready to go into the wash. It is my birthday morning. The dress has been washed and dried. Pretty happy with it. Quick comparison of this dress compared to the original work dress pattern. The main differences here being the separate front with the V-neck and the buttons, the tie straps, and it's shorter in the front because of the uneven hemline that I went with. But otherwise, everything is the same. I made both of these dresses out of 2 yards of 59-inch wide fabric, and I made a point this time of saving my waste pile, my excess. And while it is not zero waste by any stretch, it's a pretty small pile to have left over. I added one more modification to the front with this fabric scrap folded over and then sewn down to the sides here to create a little keyhole that I'm quite liking. The straps can be tied around the back, around the front, or perhaps my favorite, around the back and then tied in the front. And that is it. It's all done. Thank you so much for watching. You can get this pattern download for free at my website, ellaharp.com. You can also find links to my music and the other things that I create. Thank you so much for watching, and catch you soon.